Hello, it's Graham Crawshaw from CASME. I'd like to give you a COVID-19 update today, telling you exactly what procurement organizations are now doing in response to the crisis. Information has been collected from members, from benchmarking, from panel discussions that we've held recently, and summarized to present the overall approach to responding to COVID-19 procurement. So what I'm sharing with you here is the latest of what CASME members are telling us based on the benchmarking, the panel discussions, and recent online round tables. And so this is the activity. So supply relationship management has been proven to be of value for those companies that have got SRM programs in place. They have done better in terms of managing the COVID crisis over the last 14 weeks compared to organizations that don't have any SRM activity in place. And you can see there, 36% say, yeah, significant value, 31 say some value. And I think for those that are at the 23% of our members that said that they didn't have a formal SRM program in place, then now is the time to get that in place, because clearly the value of SRM, and I'll cover some of that in a short while as to what exactly it means and what exactly the value is very, very important. And something that needs to be in place. Let me see. Sorry, have I missed? Sorry, the slide looked the same there. Supporting suppliers. I think that has also been the topic of a lot of discussion over the last sort of 14 weeks, and it's really interesting to see the split between CASME members that are actively supporting suppliers and those that are almost having to take a more defensive approach with their supply base. So we asked the question, sort of, what are you doing to support suppliers that may be struggling? And you can see the results there. So discussions on payment terms. In that specifically, what we've seen is a split between those companies that are actively reducing payment terms so that their more vulnerable suppliers are paid quickly, and those suppliers where actually payment terms are being extended. And that just depends on your own situation in terms of your own liquidity and cash flow position. You can see they're also being less forceful in terms of measuring the supplier in terms of their KPIs. It's at 42%. And then discussions in terms of regional or local suppliers when it comes to second and third tier suppliers, that's going on with 24%. And that data almost confirms the verbal conversations that we've been having that make it clear these conversations are important with suppliers that you may not have necessarily appreciated were critical to your business. So if you look at the situation where we're at now in June 2020, the firefighting is almost ended. I was talking with a large Australian company this morning, and they were saying it is literally, even though Australia has not been hit by the virus as much as sort of Europe, what they were saying that the firefighting in terms of procurement activity is just about ending. And I think that's consistent with the message that I'm hearing. And so we move into another phase of activity. And that phase is to start to plan that post-COVID-19 era. And that will start now or as soon as the firefighting is ended and move on. And it's probably an activity that's going to require planning for the next 1, maybe even 2.5 years. And the message is quite clear that companies need to revisit their category plans and treat them quite individually. So rather than just a blanket approach to category management, it's a question of looking at the individual ones. And for some, the actions are more drastic than others. So whether it's HR, IT, facilities, there we're seeing significant change. Similarly, with travel and events, where activity has just completely stopped. So going through each of the plans that you've put in place is important to re-evaluate them and update them going forward. And the reason you want to update them is for a number of reasons, and risk is number one on that list. So what is the most important risk areas that need to be assessed and reviewed? And I'm not surprised. Continuity of supply, 100%. So there's still quite a level of nervousness in terms of moving products around the world. So ensuring that is in place is obviously the highest priority. But then it's almost what is next. And so financial stability and getting information on financial stability, which is easier said than done, is number two. And we've spoken a lot about the challenges of actually getting up-to-date information, reflecting on the vast accelerated change that companies are going through. It can be actually quite difficult to make sure that the status of a liquidity of a supplier is really known and understood. Also, call out there the visibility of suppliers looking at tier 2 and tier 3. And I think what we've also seen is that a massive project going on where companies look to really understand where their suppliers are based, where the sort of potential trouble points lie, not only first tier, but also second and subsequent tiers, and putting that responsibility to second and third tier suppliers to also do that activity to work out what could be at risk. And there's some sort of more activities that we're looking to do on that. So after risk, then sustainability is also very, very high on the agenda. And it seems that procurement is almost taking that opportunity to look at sustainability as a way, partly the continuity of supply, but also just recognizing that sources of goods need to be from suppliers that are considered sustainable, that are considered lower risk than others, operating in lower risk, or at least mitigating it in some way. Developing supply relationship management is following on from the observations that those that have got SRM activities in place are doing better. So, so again, no surprise that that's high on the agenda. Then using questionnaires to understand more about the first and second tier suppliers and checking where are they based. So there was a lot of talk about whether we need to take a more localized approach for sourcing. And I must say, I think that was a hot topic very early days of the COVID-19 crisis. I think what we're seeing now is a recognition that you can't just pull everything out of China or India and produce everything locally to where you need it. However, you can make sure that your supply sources are from different countries and have possibility of multi-sourcing. So the comment that the days of single sourcing for items that are critical to your organization are probably definitely diminished, if not gone entirely, as the robustness of the supply chain is most important. The latest one, and I'm just seeing this over the last couple of weeks, is the concept of your suppliers assessing who they see as less risky customers and suppliers de-risking the process. So I invite you to almost think from your suppliers' perspective, how are they seeing your organization? Now, I imagine for the majority of CASME members that the organizations, because they are large global organizations, that the risk of, from your supplier's perspective, trading with you is probably less. than trading with other of their customers. But I think it's a really useful one just to tune into and think through from that perspective. So are you a customer of choice from your supplier's perspective? And we have had examples where suppliers have been actively engaging with you, their customers, and really showing a willingness to want to work closer together. So always an interesting thought perspective on that. And then cost savings. Now, we did wonder what the cost savings targets would look like in terms of the pressure from organizations that are being impacted by the virus, or just impacted by the general economic changes that we see going on. And it seems very clear that the targets that procurement teams have been set are still very much in place. So there is no opportunity to just say, look, we're firefighting, sorting out COVID, let's forget about the savings. It's almost that they are expected to be in place. And so we're seeing companies that obviously are responding to budget cuts and also recessionary pressures, which are expected to grow over the next sort of few months. So it's only now, and I think it is country by country as the pressure from the virus moves around the world. It's releasing, and therefore each country, as we see, is starting to open shops or children going back to school. And I think companies then are sort of almost aligned to that relaxation of the individual local requirements. So there isn't a global perspective as yet. It is very much country by country. But yet, definitely cost savings is still on the agenda, even though those cost savings may come from different areas compared to what was anticipated that they would come from. And so check out our very specific benchmarking that we've carried out. We've done this for a number of indirect procurement categories, and we'll continue to update and produce more intelligence that really supports the development of category plans as we move from the firefighting stage through to developing and updating procurement plans. I hope you found this of interest. We'll continue to keep you updated. Until then, thank you. Goodbye.